So you were here in the 1960s as a young archaeologist on this crew with Dr. Reeves, and went on to other things and got your own degrees, and eventually came back to the Alberta government as a new manager in the newly formed Archaeological Survey of Alberta. And I know that one of the things you wanted to do right off the bat, or you thought would be a great idea, would be do something here in the way of a public interpretive facility. But that must have been frustrating at times when trying to get money for something like this.
You know, it was heady times here in Alberta, and you know, in the mid-70s. I mean, it was the first great oil boom, and of this more recent generation, and there was lots of things going on, and there was lots of interest in these kinds of things. But the whole idea of spending a whack of money on an archaeological site for whatever reason, tourism, education, whatever, was a pretty tough sell initially, and that's why I think sort of a combination of things came together that really helped us out. One was, a big one, was the start of the UNESCO World Heritage Site program, and I can still remember a fateful discussion I had at a meeting of senior historical officials from across Canada. We were meeting out in Prince Edward Island, and I had a chat with a fellow named Peter Bennett, who was the Canadian representative to the UNESCO Commission on World Heritage Sites, and he asked us collectively if we knew of any sites in Canada that we thought would qualify of being of World Heritage significance. And I can still remember just immediately jumping all over him and saying, there's one in Alberta, head smashed in buffalo jump. And he encouraged me to get it written up and submitted, which I did when I got back, and we did in fact make a successful application to have it declared a World Heritage Site, which incidentally was land-breaking in its own right, in that even though the program was fairly young, there were quite a number of sites listed from around the world on the World Heritage Site. This was the first site accepted for listing on the World Heritage Site list that was not in fact owned by the particular national government, whatever country it was that was making the nomination. This is the first time a national government had recommended a site for inclusion on the list, which in fact was not owned and operated by them. So that was a big step to get that done. But certainly the whole tone, I think, of the discussions on what we might do here changed once this was seen to have attained recognition on a world scale. That UNESCO designation was absolutely critical to convincing the provincial government that they really had a jewel here that they really should do something about.
I think there's a sort of a stigma attached if you don't. Like, you've been recognized by the world now as having a resource of world significance, and then somebody says, so, well, what have you done with it? And you say, well, nothing. Well, that's not going to make you look very good. So this seemed to be an important lever for getting the kind of funding that you wanted for this. And so I believe it was the designation was 81, and sometime in a year or two after that, I think is when your budgets for this were approved.
That's correct.
And $10 million was the total, I think?
Yep, that was the approved amount.
Seems like, I mean, it's a lot now, but it must seem like a real lot back in 19...
It seemed like we didn't know how we were going to spend all that money back then, although we did manage it pretty quickly. I should point out as well that the UNESCO designation was important in one other sense too, is right at the same time as the issue of whether or not to develop something here was going on. There was also a problem that we became aware of, that there was a new power line going to be constructed in southern Alberta, a major transmission line to carry power here from southern Alberta into British Columbia and ultimately down into the northwestern United States. And it was literally originally planned to run right behind me here, basically paralleling the road and up and over a significant portion of the jump. Well, we played the UNESCO World Heritage Site card very heavily, I can tell you, in the discussions with the regulators, and it was successful. I mean, that was a big part of their decision to tell the power companies that they had to find an alternative route that in fact did not infringe on head smashed in. And thank goodness, because we wouldn't have the kind of vista that we have here today if that had happened.